If we only looked at the headlines and didn't examine the facts, then we'd think there was no available money for anything. With the results of the dreaded comprehensive spending review looming, will those companies that service the social housing sector see their sources of funding dry up? I put that question to Julie Adkin at Focal Research, who presented a seminar to Profile 22 customers about government funding in the education and social housing sectors.
Is that there is money out there across the education sector, across the social housing sector, but it's very much more limited to individual colleges or individual schools or individual landlords, and therefore it means that you need to know who are winners in the as the money has been allocated. You need to make sure that you fine-tune how you're actually targeting business, because there are winners and losers within that.
So you're saying fabricators, installers need to look at where the opportunities are and adjust their businesses accordingly?
Very much so, because there's certainly not everyone is going to get big sums of money, but there is still a lot of money around, and therefore it's a question of identifying who has got money and in which location of the country. That's why we certainly produce information, in that way, to make sure that it's very much bespoke data. I think nowadays you have to be more of a specialist and less of a generalist to know what's going on.
The Building Schools for the Future programme, that was a big headline news story, wasn't it? A lot of money, a lot of people worried if they were working in that sector that they were going to lose out. Is that the case? Is there still work available in that market?
There's still a lot of work available. Certainly the sort of headline figures of the billions of pounds going on for years and years and years has been abandoned. But there is money available in that programme. There are school projects going ahead through the BSF programme right the way through to 2012. What's happening at the moment, though, is that the Capital Review team is seeking other ways for the government of delivering in future on procurement, on methodology in terms of whether the correct plans were in place before, in terms of making sure that projects are delivered at the most economical value. And I think that's where it was going wrong before. It was just actually costing an awful lot of money to procure a school, not just build it.
Julie explained that what we read in the papers can be misleading.
Recently there's been announcements of the new build programme with housing associations. The headline figures was that the previous government had spent £9 billion in grant. Everyone said, it's been halved completely to £4.5 billion of grant, which it has. But the systems are completely different going forward. And therefore, again, until you actually see how many homes are being produced with the cash, which is what the window industry really needs to focus on, is actually homes being produced that windows are going in, not cash in terms of grant. And that's really the important news, and therefore the figures that the government's hoping to achieve over the next 4 years are around 150,000 homes from that programme. That's not the dire situation that the press has been predicting almost by saying that the programme's been slashed by half, because in numbers of homes terms it hasn't.
So what advice can you give to companies looking to source work in the social housing markets?
I think certainly in terms of the Decent Homes programme, if we pause there for a moment, they need to segment the sector into local authorities and arm's length management organisations, ALMOs, and housing associations, because the system works so differently. So for example, if you take local authorities, you have ones that will have completed decent homes and will now be onto a steady planned capital works programme along with normal maintenance. You'll then have local authorities who've not completed decent homes yet, where they have quite a few 100,000 properties to go. I think the figure's about 200,000 properties as at next April. They divide again, though, in the ones that are now eligible to bid for a new pot of money that the government has put out there, which is a 4-year programme, and it's called the Decent Homes Backlog Finance Programme. Some authorities who have 10% or more of their stock below Decent Homes programme can bid for that cash. Those with less than 10% below Decent Homes are no longer eligible to bid for that cash unless it's exceptional circumstances. So straight away, even before that money is allocated, fabricators can look at potentially who can bid for that money and who's certainly going to be able to rule themselves out. It doesn't mean the ones that can't bid are stuck. There are other sources of money now, such as major repairs allowance, which is a new capital allowance that the government brought in during the Decent Homes programme. And going forward, that is certainly a lot of money. I mean, for example, Birmingham have just over £41 million worth every year, which they can use towards those capital repairs. Housing associations work on a completely different system, and therefore they will actually have income from rents. They'll have borrowed certain money if they're a transfer housing association. Going forward, there'll be certain property sales. Again, they can put that money back into their property if they wish. And certainly rent levels, as we've already said, are directly linked to the amount of investment that housing associations make in the future. Whilst this year they've actually gone backwards in that rent's reduced, next year they're due to go up by over 5%. And that will bring in around £480–500 million of extra turnover to housing associations. So we've gone through a very flat level in 10-11 and into a plus level in 11-12.
And that's money that they'll seek to invest back in those properties?
Yes, it's certainly there for budgets to be used in that way. And certainly most of that money will always be ploughed back into housing because of the philanthropic approach that most housing associations take. I mean, they're very much specialist in provision of housing rather than a generalist like a local authority tends to be in its wider context.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.